and I remember I grabbed a blue rope, and I was walking through my neighborhood. I was going to go hang myself in the woods, and somebody ended up calling the cops. They ended up coming out. They arrested me in my neighborhood, and they delivered me to the JPS psych ward on the 10th floor.
Okay.
And I remember thinking to myself, how the heck did I end up here?
Welcome to the show with your host, RJ Montoya.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, I'm following your lead, brother.
Oh, I got you.
I'm following your
Hey,
lead.
no, I love it. Okay, cool. Our Father in heaven, thank you, Lord, for this blessed day. Thank you for bringing us together. Thank you for bringing Brian here to this podcast. You created a path for him and then leaded him here. It also led me here to him. You say in the Bible that wherever one or two gather, you will be there, Lord. So this is our church today. We pray that it gives discernment to both of us, convicts both of us, and also helps those who are watching. Thank you, Lord. In your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Awesome. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Montoya Power Podcast. My name is RJ Montoya. Today we have a really great special guest. His name is Bryan Popp.
What's up, y'all?
What's going on, Brian? How you been?
Grateful to be here, man.
It's
Thank
awesome,
you so
man.
much for the opportunity.
Yes, I'm so glad that Victor connected us together. He sent me a quick bio, and I was just like, man, this guy has been through so much. You could write a book. You can make a movie.
Oh, geez, I can't even process that right now, but possibly we'll have to see what ends up unfolding.
Awesome. So if you don't mind, tell the viewers just a little bit about yourself. I know you're military, and you have an extensive background and credentials, and just an amazing story that I just want to get out there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to come out here. It means the absolute world to me. I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude to be able to have an opportunity to share my experience.
Absolutely.
Right? The most valuable thing from what I've come to understand is that my past experiences is the greatest asset that I currently have.
Amen.
You know, I'm struggling with alcohol and substance abuse and have been for the past 8 years. And it's brought me to this point today. And March 7th, 2023 was the catalyst. It was it was the breaking point for me where I finally made a decision to turn my life around.
Wow.
You know,
Okay.
that day was pretty massive because I was really struggling with suicidal ideation.
I've been there, brother. Yes.
At that point, and I remember I grabbed a blue rope, and I was walking through my neighborhood. I was going to go hang myself in the woods, and somebody ended up calling the cops. They ended up coming out. They arrested me in my neighborhood, and they delivered me to the JPS psych ward on the 10th floor.
Okay.
And I remember thinking to myself, how the heck did I end up here?
Right.
Never in a million years did I think that this was going to be my mission, and it was the drugs and the alcohol that broke me down to that point, and it was the greatest gift that I ever had. And it's the most valuable asset because I have an opportunity to be on podcasts like this to be able to share the experiences and what brought me there.
This happened on base?
So this was actually in Grapevine where this ended
Gotcha.
ended up happening, and there was a long series of events, man, that I would love to get into that brought me to that point. So, but I wanted to lead with that first, right?
Yes, powerful stuff.
Absolutely. So, like I said, I'm super excited to get into this thing, man.
Let's do it, man. So you said that it was a pivotal moment in your life, and someone called the police. Explain to me why you feel that moment was life changing, and it brought you to this point.
Yeah, no. You know, what I came to understand is that my ego and the intellect which drove every single behavior and every single decision that I had ever made ended up getting me into trouble.
Gotcha.
Right? In order for me to be able to make that change, my ego and every idea that I thought which led me through those behaviors that were unconsciously driving those behaviors had to be completely broken down to a point where I had an opportunity to be reborn into this new person that I was.
Gotcha.
The drugs and the alcohol, they grabbed a hold of me.
Yes.
And I didn't realize why I was drinking and drugging in the way that I was. But what I came to understand was that I had been operating out of a place of fear my entire life.
Wow.
It wasn't the drugs and the alcohol that was the problem.
It was
this
eternal.
guy. It was eternal.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a lot of self-reflection, and you know, I've talked with people that have dealt with alcohol abuse in particular, and what I've learned is that it's a lot to do with self-reflection and accountability. And until we face those demons, and we're always kind of blaming everybody else,
Sure.
and it sounds like you were soothing. I'll just call them your internal injuries with the drug abuse and so forth.
Absolutely, man. It's overcoming those traumas, those failures, those mistakes, those follies, which for somebody like me, especially coming from the military,
Right.
type A, very limited room for
Hey,
error, right?
yeah.
Complacency is the number one killer.
Complacency kills. Yes.
100%, right?
Yes, sir.
And I heard you speaking on that in a podcast, and that's something that really resonated with me. I'm like, man, I'm glad that he said that because it sparked those memories, right? Not being able to fail or having the fear of being able to fail was something that was driving those behaviors for me in every aspect of my entire life.
Right.
Professional life, my social life, the relationships that I had as well. Like having this fear of not being able to go into some of these relationships and fully give myself to someone
Right.
out of fear that I was going to get hurt. And I pointed the finger and I blamed the whole world for the way that I felt because I was too proud and too afraid to make peace with my past.
Wow.
And
Making peace with your past.
that's what
phenomenal.
it is. And I
Yeah.
wasn't able to do that because of that ego, because of that pride.
Where do you think that started? Was that? I'm sure the military encouraged that a little bit. 'Cause,
A little bit, a little bit, right? Like limited room for error. You know, I
Yes.
remember showing up to boot camp because I got accepted into the United States Coast Guard Academy
Okay.
on a scholarship. Right, I got my appointment there.
Nice.
And I was a recruited football player.
Okay.
So
Gotcha. Yeah.
you know, and I can talk
Dallas
about.
could use a quarterback from time to time.
Oh Jesus, man! You don't want me playing quarterback for the
Hey.
Dallas Cowboys. You know, you
Yeah.
definitely don't want that. But I don't know, man. Maybe I can go up there and throw a couple passes every
maybe.
now and again. Jerry Jones would fire me real quick.
Probably. Yeah. He's a type A too, but he's one that doesn't listen.
Yeah, dude, I know. I mean, over at the United States Coast Guard Academy,
Right.
you know, you're in the cadet corps, right? Which really isn't like the real military in a sense. It is, but it isn't, right? Because you're developing leaders of character that have an opportunity to not only graduate after a 4-year program,
Right.
but then you also receive a commission. It's a vetting.
Really?
It's a vetting process.
Oh, wow. I didn't know
right
that.
to
Okay.
see as to whether or not you're worthy of holding a commission as an O1, so an ensign, right, which is equivalent to the second lieutenant, which I'm sure you, but maybe the viewers don't know, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
As a leader within the military. And that's something that I really struggled with. You know, entering in, being 18, 19 years old, super immature, you know,
Right.
thinking that,
And who's not immature at 18?
I was a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You know, and just thinking that, I could go in and do whatever it is that I needed to do, but when you're working under standard operation procedures throughout the military, there's a certain way that things have to be done.
Yes.
And I really struggled with adhering and adapting to that lifestyle up front, especially when you're in the cadet corps and working with students or with cadets that are in their developmental stages
For
of
sure.
becoming leaders,
For
right?
sure. They're kind of not thrown into wolves, for lack of better words, but they're training, but they're still very green. And then maybe everyone doesn't have that leadership skill.
Sure.
But then they're over you, and you're kind of like, why are you over me?
100%, right? Acceptance. I couldn't accept the people, the places, the things.
That's good.
And
Just dropping quotes over here.
man, it's dude, it's these quotes that are constantly reinforced within me that help me throughout my sobriety, right?
Oh wow.
But my experience throughout my time at the Coast Guard Academy really allowed me to do some of this inner work and figure out, okay, where does this anger come from? Where does this resentment come from? Where does this anxiety and this depression? It stemmed from me not believing that I could be in control of every single situation, which when I was in the military, that's kind of a part of the dynamic, right? You're in this leadership position. It's your job to accomplish the mission and push everything forward.
Right.
So I was unable to relinquish control specifically as someone who's a freshman coming in, a basic recruit in the Marine Corps, right? Is that what you guys referred?
Just recruit.
Recruits,
Yeah.
right? They called us
Scum of the
swabs.
earth.
Where you wake up and the drill sergeants are on your butt from the moment you
Yeah.
wake to the moment you go to sleep, right?
Okay, yes, sir.
So it was the same thing like going through boot camp. Like for us, when you think of West Point and the Naval Academy, which is the same thing as the Coast Guard Academy, but
Okay.
just a different branch, right?
Oh, I never knew that, and I've always been intrigued by all the academies. Obviously, they made that movie with Tyrese back in the day, and I think James Franco.
That's right.
And I was just like, in Annapolis, and I was just like, how true is that to the academies?
it's dramatized,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, it does a pretty good job
Really?
depicting
Oh, wow.
what it's like going into, to the military life. And there was this one part of the scene where James Franco gets off during Christmas break, and they don't know if he's going to come back.
Right.
And the officer's taking accountability, but he shows up the very last second. And I remember that emotion.
Yeah?
Especially after your freshman year, because they strip you of all your privileges, kind of like boot camp, right?
Absolutely.
They strip you of all your privileges.
Luxuries, all
That's
the good
what it
stuff.
is, right? And I didn't realize that going in that was going to be a part of the sacrifice, right? Is being able to let go of those liberties and those freedoms that I
Absolutely.
had when I was a civilian, right?
And a lot of civilians don't understand that when you enter the military, you literally give up, essentially almost your life, but you're living.
Yeah.
But you give away all your rights.
100%.
So it's a lot of freedom, a lot of sacrifice.
And I didn't realize that. Again, being an 18-year-old kid,
for sure,
was very, very immature, lacked life experience, and a millennial, right? Where we get things on command, like whenever it is that we want it. We're filled full of that instant gratification. Now you're telling me I can't have my phone, I can't have Facebook, I can't have Instagram, like little things like that that I would complain about.
Gotcha.
Which is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Now you see that.
Now
back
I see
then
that.
it was a big deal.
I was oblivious.
Right, absolutely.
I was completely delusional. But that experience going through the academy, and I didn't graduate because after about the second and a half year, they pulled me into an academic review board where I remember I walked in and I had my operational dress uniform on, right? And as a fourth class cadet, one of the privileges that they take away from you is that you can't look at your food. So I had to sit straight up, and I don't know if it was similar to you when you were going through boot camp in the Marine Corps. I didn't did you have to eat a certain way?
Well, drill instructors would come around, and we'd have to kind of sit like that and look at each other, and then we couldn't eat until they said eat. So it was very similar to that, and then when it was done, it was done. It was 30 seconds sometimes. Eat like you're done, and then throw away the food, and it's like this big plate of food. Like, oh man, I haven't ate. And
For an entire year, it's something called squaring your meals, right? Okay. So I had my fork.
For an entire year, is that what you said?
For an entire year. I'm going to try to move this mic a little bit
fine.
so I can animate it for you.
Yeah.
So I had to sit straight up like this, all the fourth class cadets, and we couldn't look at our food, but we had to put it on our fork, bring it straight up, and square it like this while we're keeping our eyes straight ahead.
Okay, gotcha.
Right, and that really frustrated me as well. So before I ended up showing up to this academic review board, I had been getting in trouble at this point. There's always that one person going through boot camp or that's in the military that's always getting in trouble.
The one that gets everybody else killed?
100%.
Was that you?
No.
Like in the Marine Corps, we'd be like, someone would do something once. They caught a guy who had a donut in his locker box, and so they were like, oh, okay, you want to eat donuts, and made the whole platoon push up while he's sitting there eating donuts. Like, enjoy that donut. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, that's what we called in the Marines. Like, got other people killed.
Yeah. Gotcha. We'll have some similar experiences going through boot camp as well, right? We called it getting IT'd.
Yes.
Or getting in the I believe they called it the PIP, the Performance Enhancement Platoon.
Yeah, there you go.
Where they would pull you aside and they'd make you march around base with a gun over your head.
Oh,
while everyone else was like doing, intramural sports or something like that. So we had a small break where we had a little bit of camaraderie with.
Yeah, it's a form of discipline. That's what people don't get, but outside of the military, but it's a form of discipline.
And looking back on it, those were the funniest stories to be able to reflect on. I was getting into some trouble. My academics were starting to dwindle a little bit because when you enter into the academy, they're trying to test your time management skills and trying to push you from like a stress standpoint, right? So entering in, I was taking 21 credit hours a semester, managing my military obligations, and on top of that, I was playing football at the same time.
Wow.
At the and also having those liberties and adjusting to military culture.
Right.
It was a lot. For me,
were you playing football for them?
I was.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, okay. I was. I wasn't on Jerry Jones' Cowboy team.
Right.
I could play a little.
Absolutely,
play a little slot.
No, the academies have really great football programs.
The Coast Guard was the smallest branch of military, right? So there's less people in the United States Coast Guard than there are the New York Police Department.
Really?
So it's the smallest branch of military, and we do operations of drug, migrant, and addiction. Search and rescue and stuff like that. But for me, I was a cadet. I didn't make it to that point because I never commissioned, but
I
a
got you.
bunch of my buddies that were in the military ended up doing that. They stayed the course and they were obedient, but for me, I was a little bit more rebellious,
Uh-oh.
right?
Well, wild child.
Yeah, a little bit, right? There's always one.
Yeah.
There's always one. So I entered in. Just to circle back a little bit, I entered into this academic review board, and they were verifying whether or not they were going to give me another semester or not.
Okay.
Because my grades had really slipped. I was screwing up with some of my military obligations, but the only thing I had going for me was that I was, halfway decent at running and catching a football and running crisp routes. That's the only thing.
At this point, did you want to stay in?
No.
Okay.
But there was definitely a lot of pressure from back home.
Right.
I come from a military family.
Wow.
My dad served in the Air Force. My cousin who was a Green Beret, my other cousin who was in the Air Force, my grandpa who was in the Army. So
wow. Well, thank you for your family service.
Yeah, it was something that I wanted to follow in their footsteps because I saw that persona, I saw that demeanor, right? That ability to be composed under stress and stuff like that. And that's definitely
and
something
you
that
grew up
attracted me.
around a lot of these men, so this was your entire life. So you always had this standard.
100%.
Okay.
And it was driven into me, like at an early age, right? Like there's this expectation in this standard that you have to meet, and I think that's why I had such a hard time adapting to that cadet corps type of culture, right? Because I was exposed to it early on.
Absolutely.
Through family members that I had looked up to that were high speed, as well, and it's definitely something that I
So
strive
you weren't
for.
unfamiliar to it. It's what was that for you? Was it you were just tired of authority? What do you feel it was for you at that point?
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely tired of authority at that point and just kind of getting burned out.
Okay.
Right? So I didn't get direct admission into the school. I had to go through 1 year of a preparatory school before I was able to get in.
Gotcha.
Right? So I made the grades, got my appointment, and then eventually they forced me out. Right? They forced me out because I wasn't adhering to that, wasn't meeting the standard that was required, that they saw was worthy of someone who could commission and actually become a leader in the Coast Guard.
Okay.
And they were 100% right. I did not deserve whatsoever. As much as I wanted to fight it, I did not deserve to commission in the United States military. I wasn't worthy of that because of my attitude, because of that pride, because of that ego, because of my unwillingness to be obedient towards the standard operating procedures as far as what they were looking for, right?
Well, that's very honest of you.
That's what it is, and I can be honest now.
Right.
But back then, I pointed the finger and I projected those emotions on everybody else. But this had become a reoccurring behavior.
Gotcha.
In all areas of my life.
Okay.
And by the time I had processed out, I lost all my friends that were in the military, and there's a certain brotherhood, and I'm sure that develops out of necessity, right? As a way to survive. I wasn't on the front line, so I can't speak on that experience, right? So when I'm listening to the podcast with you and Jason talking about the Battle of Fallujah, I have so much appreciation and respect for you guys to be able to do that, right? Because it was able to take it to another level.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that, man. And you know what I tell all veterans, whether they're combat or not combat, it's all one mission.
Sure.
I'm not Chris Kyle. There's other guys out there who have achieved so much more than I have. Even the battalion we were attached to, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, they're the heroes, man. They did so much out there, and it was a blessing to be a part of that. It was a life altering experience.
Sure.
But I tell people all the time, man, it's all one mission, every single branch, and you're absolutely right. We miss our families when we're there together. Sure. Some of us are married, some of us are not. We're young. It's the first time away from town, so we create this bond within each other, and it's just it's more than a fraternity. I think it's a lifelong brotherhood. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
Can you speak on what did your transition from military to civilian life look like? I mean, was that a struggle for you when you were kind of unplugged from that structure? Now you got all this freedom. You're working on getting your military. You probably got some military benefits. You maybe had a little bit of coin in the bank to give yourself some flexibility. Was that tough?
Man, for real, it was super tough because when I went in, and I'll try to be respectful about this because I don't talk about my ex-wife.
Sure.
But we were very young, met her. It wasn't love. Got her pregnant. I was training because we were getting deployed. I was in California, and I get this phone call saying, "Hey, I'm pregnant." So I just received orders saying that we're going to Fallujah, and all you see is on the news is just like insurgents and IEDs and explosives and all. In my head, I'm thinking like, okay, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna die, right? I'm gonna fight, do what I got to do, train, whatever's needed of me. But in my head, I was just like, I'm probably gonna end up dying in an IED blast or something. Um, she was my girlfriend at the time told me that she was pregnant. Then that was just like another punch in the stomach. It was just like, oh my God. So now I'm gonna have a child that I'm never gonna meet. And so I did the right thing, what I thought was the right thing at the time, and I married her. And I remember I went down to the courthouse. I had my dress blues on, proposed to her, not the whole nine.
Yeah.
But so I had to go through that while getting deployed, knowing that I have a child, and then the fear of, okay, I could die, something could happen to me. So I won't get into the deployment stuff.
Sure.
But when I got back home, I was literally homeless. I didn't have anywhere to live. I slept on the couch. My ex's family didn't approve of our marriage from the get-go because they never cared for me. So that just dwindled down. I filed for divorce. Then I had to go through a huge custody battle. And then her attorney was saying that because of my combat stress that I wasn't a fit father. So we went through this whole custody battle.
They try to use it against you, huh?
Absolutely. And so I fought for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. I went to the VA because my daughter came up to me when I was sleeping on the couch, and I didn't realize it was her. She just came up to me, and I got up, and in my mind, I saw an insurgent, so I grabbed her, and I opened my eyes, and it was her, and she's just smiling in my face.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, and then after that, I didn't know what PTSD was, man. I didn't know what combat stress was. I didn't know what any of these things were. So I went to the VA. I was just like, well, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. Go to the VA, and when I first get there, and this was back in the day, um, the lady kind of gaffs me off, and then I was upset, and I almost left, but I went to another lady, and I told her, I said, hey, I'm just trying to talk to someone. I was told this is where I'm supposed to go. I've been having some nightmares and stuff like that. And then she said, oh, we're sorry. It's just that we've had a lot of homeless people come in here and pretend to be veterans to try to get benefits. So I remember that because I was this close from not asking help.
Yeah.
But I went ahead and went around the corner. Some other person decided to help me. So they reevaluated me and talked to me, and then they put me into the mental health program. They gave me a cocktail of meds and stuff.
Sure.
So that was my first introduction to life kind of after the military. But there was still no transition programs. They gave us 2 weeks after coming back home from deployment, the classes and stuff like that.
Sure.
But that was kind of it. So I didn't have anywhere to process or decompress.
Sure.
So we started a veterans group in my church, and it's very important to me because you have the VA, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not the VA, excuse me. You have the VFWs and stuff like that for veterans.
Sure.
And this is not to knock them because they've done great things, but some of them they're around alcohol. And so guys come to vent and be angry and talk about their divorce or their deployment or how someone screwed them over in training or whatever it is.
Sure.
And they get lost in that addiction and abuse. So I decided, you know what, me and a couple buddies back in the day, one of the elders in my church wanted to start a vets group, and he asked me to be a part of it.
Yeah.
I thought I was just going to be a member, but he asked me to be a leader. I wasn't ready to lead, and it was kind of like Jonah. I was running away from leadership because after the military, I was like, I'm tired of leading.
Sure.
Like, I got to fix myself here and here.
Yeah.
So that's been phenomenal in helping vets, but back then I didn't have anything like that. I didn't have someone to talk to. I didn't have a church to go to. I didn't have a vets group to go to. So I spiraled for a long time. There was a little alcohol abuse there. The cocktails and the meds wasn't helping, and then I just ran through women, for lack of better words. That was my healing copinism, I guess I would say. Then I was very aggressive and very angry. I was ready to fight everybody, man.
It seems like you and me are like two peas in a pod.
Really?
As far as that goes, right? Me transitioning out or being forced out, there was definitely some resentment there. I was developing resentment against the military, right?
Okay.
It was all me. The military gave me an opportunity to be of maximum service to this country.
I love that.
But I couldn't see that. because I couldn't see past my own self-will and my own intentions and my own pride. And still to this day, it's a thorn in my side when I go back and I think about that, right? But at the same time, again, after getting out, and I think maybe we can relate to this, I lost my entire identity as a person. This entire persona, this entire identity that was wrapped up both in my ability to play sports,
Right.
which was a huge piece for me.
For sure.
It's something that I really invested a lot of time and energy into. But having that structure, having my best friends that became my best friends within the first 4 weeks of going through boot camp. I mean, at the snap of a finger, we clicked because we had to.
Yes.
Right? Standing room inspection, going out and getting IT'd, eating donuts while the rest of the platoon gets smoked, right?
Yes.
Like little things like that we can look back and we can joke about. Those are experiences that I couldn't have had with any other friend growing up.
Absolutely. And you never will.
You know, and I cherish those.
Absolutely.
So in a sense, I felt like I really let down the guys that were there because I couldn't see past my own intentions. I couldn't see past the fact that I was doing this not for me, but I was doing it out of service to other people.
Amen. I love
You
that.
know?
Yes, I love that. Do you still hold on to that regret, or how do you view it today?
I try to let it go, but there's definitely a piece of me that tells me, like my ego tells me, you know what, maybe this could have been a good opportunity, right? But at the same time, you know, going through this journey of recovery, which I'll get to a little bit later on. I want to talk a little bit, if you're okay with
Absolutely, let's do it.
over what it looked like being an active addiction, right? And just some of the events that brought me right here to even have an opportunity to start opening up about some of this stuff. And, you know, when I officially processed out and I was trying to figure out what am I going to do, right? Kind of similar to what you had talked about with working with the VA and stuff like that. I had no idea what I wanted to do because I didn't know who I was as a person, but I genuinely thought I did.
You were starting over.
I was starting over from scratch. Like, okay, who's this person? Who is this person now? I have no idea. You know, I was going back to community college. This was back in 2015.
Okay.
I was 22 years old. I'm 31 years old now.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, going for a business management degree just because that's what everyone did.
That's crazy. I when I first went to school the first time, I was like business management because I want to be an entrepreneur.
That was it, right? I mean, but that's what a lot of my friends did. Like, we had no idea what the heck we wanted to do. Okay, we'll get this business management degree and we'll just see what transcends. So there was a lot of fear of the unknown in that place. Like, and not knowing what was going to happen, I think definitely hindered my ability. I mean, being 22 and still being immature and having a lack of life experience, right? And this is where drugs and alcohol started to seep in.
Okay.
You know, I would work I'd be in school like Monday through Thursday, and then Friday at 7 p.m. to Saturday, it was on like Donkey Kong. Right, I'm in my early 20s. I'm 21 years old. I'm going
so the weekends
out
were for
party.
parties.
That's what it was, right?
Yeah.
It was a work hard, play hard. I'm going to put this work in, and then I'm going to reward myself on the weekends. And I was good. It was manageable.
For sure.
It was manageable.
You're young. You can get up at 4 in the morning and
absolutely.
do your thing.
Right,
Yeah.
I could recover in a matter of 24 hours.
Right.
You know, but doing that, you know, today or, you know, towards the tail end, it took me like an entire week to recover. My body just couldn't handle it.
Absolutely. I don't know if it's true. They say that. Heard somewhere that when you drink alcohol, it stays in your system for a few days or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on what substance and the level of potency.
Okay.
And it depends on how much you're drinking, right?
Right.
For alcoholics that become physically dependent upon, I mean, obviously the alcohol is going to stay in their system a lot longer.
For sure.
Versus somebody who's in his
filtering it out,
100%,
drinking water,
right?
Working out or something.
So, I mean, I would argue probably anywhere between 48 to 72 hours. Somebody's going to have to fact check me on that if you guys are listening to this right now.
Hey, I'm sure someone will fact check us in the comments. Like, hey, you guys are wrong.
I'm not trying to spit fake news over here, but we got Google to follow up with that.
There you go.
And yeah, dude. So that's when the alcohol started to seep in.
So tell me about that. Like what was? Can you identify a certain day, certain party, certain buddy? Like, where did you, for lack of better words, get hooked? I guess.
I mean, it just became like this same cycle that I was on, but I was pawning it off as fun. I'm in my 20s. I'm supposed to be doing this,
Right.
taking Ubers out to Dallas and to downtown Fort Worth and have some fun with my friends and go to concerts and stuff like
Right.
that. I thought it was just fun and games.
Just what you do.
That's just what I do, right?
Right.
That's what a lot of people do in their 20s. They get it
sure.
out of their system and then they're
Yeah.
off to, get family and all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I came to realize after the fact is that I was drinking to cope with the way that I felt.
That
Because
makes sense.
because I was unhappy with where I was at working. At that point, I had left school, and then I became a loan officer in the mortgage industry, right? So now I'm starting
Really?
to bounce back and forth, right? The unmanageability is starting to
Okay.
kick in. Okay, maybe I'm going towards school. I'm not doing school anymore. Now I'm going to go to job. I don't like this job. Bounce to this one and this one. Just trying to search for that fulfillment, trying to search for that joy. And I was working as a loan officer after I put the school to the side. And I was doing real well there. It was a sales position. I was getting that rush, getting that high from the commission checks that were coming in.
Was that was there like materialism that came into play as you climbed the ladder of success with the mortgage and stuff and making money? And
I'm so glad you asked that, man. I mean, I was materialistic, sycophantic, and fanatically entitled.
Okay.
And that was the recipe for disaster.
Yes, it is, because you're always chasing that next high, even if it's not drugs. You're chasing. And I went through that. I went through a womanizing phase, and I had to have a nice watch and smell like cologne and the car. And is that
Okay.
similar to that? Or?
It wasn't real, man. I mean, at the end of the day, you and me were on the same page here. I feel like I'm talking to the same person
Hey,
right
man.
now,
Yeah.
So it's honestly, it's comforting to be able to hear that, and you have the willingness to be able to open up and share this,
100%,
because
yeah.
it lets me know that I'm not alone,
You're
but we can identify with the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where these relationships are able to, to blossom, which I was unable to build those relationships because I was in love with the bottle. I was in love with the drugs. I was in love with, pornography was a huge coping mechanism for me as well. I know that's a taboo topic,
Yeah.
but it's a real issue that guys struggle with.
Absolutely. You know what? It shouldn't be taboo. I mean, you got OF, this like blowing up, I'm like, it's not really taboo. Like people today are just kind of like, this is what you do. There was a young female, I forgot her name, but she made $35 million last year on OF, and they were comparing her to like a UFC fighter that only made like 60,000. To each his own, but I'm just saying you're right. It can be a trap. It is a trap.
Sure.
It is. So I think we should talk about stuff like that.
100%. I mean, and again, it comes down to whether or not I was willing to take accountability for those coping mechanisms, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what I came to understand is that the drinks, the drugs, the meaningless sex, the sugar, the pornography, and all of those underlying low vibrational emotions of anger, depression, of anxiety, of guilt, shame, embarrassment, which kept me caught in this loop of self-sabotage, that was the problem. The drugs and all that other stuff that I coped with, that was the solution to a much more complex problem, being me. And until I was willing to go into the past to the academy and realize, hey, these were the behaviors that were reoccurring,
Wow.
that filtered over when I
Yes.
ended up leaving. The constant quitting, the fear of failure, the mistakes that I made. And for me, being that perfectionist, which is derived from being in the military, right? A complacency is a killer,
Yeah.
right? There's limited room for failure.
Right.
That's why I became a perfectionist, and I had this type, and I still have this. I mean, look at me. I got this type A. I'm like doing this with my hands right now. You
Yeah.
know, I had that type A personality. I was afraid to fail. That was at the root of every drink and every drug. I was afraid that I would fail to be the person I always wanted to become. And I didn't know who that person was going to be because I was unwilling to surrender.
Right.
Right?
What brought you to that revelation? Like, what brought you to that point through your journey of abuse of alcohol and drugs and stuff? Like, was there like a you're on your knees moment, like, God, I messed up, or I need more, or like this ain't it? Like, what was it?
So I checked into rehab. I'm going to answer that, but let me just kind of give you the
sure, go for
recovery
it.
process, right? To
Absolutely.
kind of build it up a little bit
Yeah.
so it can provide some context to some of the audience. You know, I was 26 years old when I checked into my first rehab. And I walked in there and I was constantly comparing myself to the other people, right? Because I put myself on this on this pedestal.
Right.
This is how prideful, this is how egotistical that I was, right? I'm not this person. I'm better than that person, right? And with the disease of addiction, it doesn't discriminate.
Wow.
It's the only disease that can convince someone that they don't have the disease. It's a mental illness at the end of the day.
That's powerful.
Right? And over the past few years, I had been to 3 rehabs, cycled in and out of 3 rehabs, a sober living house over in the Denton area that I quit after 3 weeks. I even moved away to another state to try to run away from my problem.
Wow.
I was running away.
Wow, that's crazy. I had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, and I told him, I said, dude, if you run away, don't use it as an excuse to spiral and get deeper into.
Sure,
you know
sure.
what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it only exacerbated the issue, man. It was a black hole.
Yes.
I mean, and like once I got caught in that cycle, it was impossible to get out of it because I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the skills, I didn't have the coping mechanisms because the drinks and the drug were on every single corner. It gave me the instant gratification that I needed.
Where was your support system, or did you have one?
I mean,
Did they abandon you by that point, or?
So that's a great question, right? My family has always been there to support me, but I was unwilling to ask for help.
Okay.
I was fighting it because I thought I had the tools, right? I'm in this military mindset. I got this. I can control this situation. My life isn't unmanageable. I can stop this on my own because I'm disciplined.
Right.
I'm motivated. But it was just
that's
feeding
part
that
of
delusion.
the, like you said, it's part of the mental issue situation where you feel like it's not as bad as they're making it out to be. I'm in control.
Sure.
So you kept lying to yourself, kind of.
It was me thinking that I was God.
Oh, wow.
That's
Really?
what it was.
That's crazy.
That's what it was, right? And I, at this point, I didn't really have a relationship with God. I mean, I'm a confirmed Catholic, grew up in the Roman Catholic Church, but I never went to church. I'd go on Christmas Eve with my family.
Right.
And the only reason why I did is so that I didn't get chewed out or I got, Christmas presents the morning after. I got Christmas presents.
So you were like a seasonal Christian.
It was just
Easter and.
I reached out to God when I needed God. Selfishly.
Most people do that though.
Right? Foxhole prayers.
Hey.
That's what it came down to when when I needed God. But if I was at a bar, I'd tell you all about my relationship with God after a few drinks. But all I was doing was coining off information that I got from a YouTube video the night before, and then coining off those ideas as my own.
Right.
It wasn't real.
You were just riding the high of that buzz.
It was
the beer or whatever.
100%, man. I mean, it wasn't real. It was superficial. But I was able to put up this front and this persona of what I wanted people to see versus what was actually going on in here. There was a lot of hurt, there was a lot of trauma, and there was a lot of fear that was driving those behaviors.
For sure. So tell me a little bit about that. So you grew up in a Catholic church, and you said you attended and so forth. Why do you feel there was a disconnect? Were you just doing it because it was a traditional thing to do? My parents go, so I go.
Sure.
It was kind of like that?
I mean, my dad grew up in a family of 9, right? All my family's from the Northeast, Roman Catholic family. 9 members of his family. 5 of his family members, high school sweethearts, still together today, or at the time of their death. Doesn't exist,
really?
Right?
No. People got married young back then because a lot of people wanted that sex. So it's you got to get married because the world was different. It was. Look it up. It's the truth. Well, back then there was more of a standard.
Sure.
When it came to respect and the covenant between the marriage of a husband and wife and God. So it's just it even says that in the Bible.
Yeah.
If and I'm paraphrasing, but it says if you can't control the lust in your loins, then you should be married. So you shouldn't rush to marriage. There's Proverbs and a whole bunch of things that tell you how to be a good husband and a good wife. But that's biblical. So back in the day, because church was kind of the norm, it was just let's just get married. Different world.
Sure. But it's because of the church and because of being raised in a religious household why my dad's family was so tight knit, and they were able to have those marriages. And this was trickled down into my family as well.
Absolutely.
Right. But I was rebellious as a teenage kid. I did it because they wanted me to do it.
Right.
So at that time, I guess you could say I wasn't ready to really fully give myself to the church because I had my own agenda as far as what it was that I wanted to do.
For sure, and I think there's a misconception that a lot of people that are kind of born or raised through the church,
Yeah.
that they're expected to, oh, well, your father's a preacher or your family's a church people, like, so you should just have it all, like you should understand what it is, but it's like that's not how it works.
Sure. And I experienced that with, the relationship that I had with my dad. He's the best person that I know. Hands down, no questions asked. I mean, he's a dude that will have your back 24/7 if you ever need him. But at the same time, it came with a price, right? There was this expectation, but it came out of a place of love of him wanting his kids to strive to be the absolute best that they could possibly be. Now that set me up for my greatest successes, but at the same time, it also set me up for my greatest downfalls because if I wasn't able to meet that expectation, I would get full of resentment and full of fear and think that I was a failure. At the same time, had nothing to do with him. He was just doing what he had to do as a dad. Again,
Right.
best guy that I ever know. It came as a byproduct of me not being able to have that understanding and being able to let go because I didn't fully give myself to God at that point because I believed I was God.
Was he tough on you?
He was fair. He was
Okay.
fair. I mean, he like I said, man, he was the best. He is the best guy that I ever known. He obviously had his boundaries, and he's very, ex-military. He flew KC-10s during Desert Storm, Desert Shield.
Oh, wow.
He just retired from American Airlines, flying
crazy.
787s, right? So you think of
Yeah.
his mentality, right?
Right.
Limited room for error.
Did that ever push you away from your relationship from son to father? Because I was tough on my oldest daughter. She's 20, and I was very tough on her.
Yeah.
She'd come home with like 98s, and I'd be like, "You can get hundreds." Yeah, and I kind of backed off with the other two that I have now, but with her, it was just she was like my little Marine.
Yeah.
And there's certain parts where I wish I could take it back, but again, I was processing PTSD and trying to decompress from the military. Today, I'm a different father,
Sure.
so that's why I'm asking you. Like, did that push you away in some sense?
I think it did at some point, especially when I had gotten out of the military and lost my identity. I was resenting everything and everybody because I was projecting my insecurities onto other people because deep down inside, I was deeply unsatisfied with where I was at in life.
Gotcha.
It came from a place of love.
Yeah.
I mean, my mom and my dad been married for, I think, like 42 years now.
Wow, are you
Right?
serious?
And they still do everything together, man.
Yeah.
I mean, they go play pickleball together. They go bowling together, like they do church group together, right? So
42 years.
42
Wow,
years.
That's crazy.
But
It's something to strive for.
yeah, like I said, man, like at the time, yes, but I was young. I was immature. I didn't understand what he was trying to do. He was trying to set me up for success,
For sure.
and like having that dog in me, having that fight, this will to try to become the absolute best person that I was or am in every single area of my entire life.
Do you guys have a good relationship today?
Best person I ever know.
Sweet. Awesome.
Best person I ever, and he's the best man that I ever known, and I'm like so incredibly grateful for him. And even today, now that I'm sober, I mean, it's the strongest relationship that I've ever had.
How long have you been sober?
So March 7th of this year, God willing, it'll be 2 years.
Really?
Yeah, it'll be 2 years,
Wow.
man.
Congratulations. man.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
So, and I owe every bit of that to the spirituality that I'm gaining on a day-by-day basis.
Okay.
Right. What I came to understand is to answer your question, right? Like, what moment was that?
Yeah.
Is when I ended up in the psych ward.
Really?
When I ended up in the psych ward, they put me in these blue paper pajamas. They rolled me in a wheelchair into this room where I had to be detained for 48 hours.
Wow. You were strapped?
I wasn't strapped, no,
Okay.
but there were some guys in there that were strapped.
Right.
Right, and it fed that ego, man, I'm not this guy, I don't have a problem.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And I still remember the smell being up there, and I just remember having my hands out. I had my head in my hands thinking to myself, how in the world did I end up here? I was successful playing sports. I got into one of the top military institutions in the entire world. I got employed with Citigroup as a loan officer, making more money than I knew what to do with.
Wow.
Right? How did I end up here?
So you were up there. Like you weren't on the street. You weren't like struggling. Like if someone saw you on face value, they'd be like, "Man, that's a successful looking dude."
100%.
That's crazy.
But I was dying on the inside.
Appearances can be deceiving.
Appearances can be deceiving. I
Wow.
was so unhappy with where I was at. And hitting that bottom moment, I went from having a condo to having a sports car that was paid off to going out on dates and to drinking and having a good time and meeting people,
Wow.
to losing everything. I mean, everything that I had built up in my mind and this identity that I was completely lost at that point.
Were you dating at the time? Like, did you have a girlfriend or
Um,
girlfriends?
uh, I wasn't capable of having a long-term relationship because I was in a relationship with the bottle. Like, and that got in the way of it, right? I mean, why put effort into building out a relationship where I can get that instant gratification like
Right.
that?
And I'm assuming they tried to pull you away from the bottle.
Sure, sure. If I let them get too close, but if they got too close and they started, saying, "Hey, these are some of the expectations that I had,"
That's when you were like, I'm done mentally. Like,
I'd push them away.
I
I'd push
guess.
them away, right?
Yeah.
Because I was afraid. I was afraid to be able to build those ready because I wasn't ready to give up the other stuff because it was easy, it was quick, it was instant. I'm not trying to put this work in. I'm in my 20s, I'm trying to have fun.
So today you're very transparent and apparently very humble. Tell me the guy that you were when you pushed the people that loved you away like that. And
Sure.
when you focused on the bottle and your material and the sports car and just the success, like who was that guy?
Thank you for the question. I love that. Selfish and self-centered to the core, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-pity, self-delusion, and self-seeking motives, which I put myself and the other people around me in a position to be hurt. I was driven by fear, and it was the evil, corroding thread of my existence,
Wow.
which led me back to the bottle every single time. And I pushed everybody away, and they were so concerned about me, and they begged me to stop, but I wasn't ready to give it up because I was head over heels
Right.
in love with those coping mechanisms, and nothing was going to get in the way of that. And I
Man.
didn't realize how selfish I was being. But that was it, man. But I get to reflect on that now because of that moment in the psych ward and because I made a decision, because that was the catalyst, right? And that was the catalyst moment that acted as the changing point. It was the event that said, this is it.
So go back to that the psych ward. Tell us that you're coming in, you're seeing
Yeah.
guys strapped up. You're like, that's not me. And what happened? What happened next?
I got out. I went back home because at that point I was living at my parents' house, and they said, look, either you pack a bag and you're going to rehab, which would have been the third time, or get out of my house. Go do what you're going to do. If you want to do this, go do what you want to do.
Had they ever spoken to you like that before?
Never.
Wow.
That was the first time that I came to understand that what I was doing was drastically affecting the relationships and the people that loved me most and that were there and that smothered me with love and that supported me and wanted to make sure that I didn't fall. They had enough of it, and them setting that hard boundary and giving me that tough love was one of the greatest gifts because I went into treatment for this third time, and I finally made a decision to let go and surrender to the idea that I ain't God, but there is a God, and I ain't it.
That's amazing because the Father's love, which is God, he gave us free will, so he's gonna let us go through it. We can choose him or we can choose the world. Your paternal father kind of gave you the same choice. It's funny because I was talking to a buddy a few years ago, and he'd reach out to me when he needed help too. He had an alcohol issue, and every now and then I would help him out with money and stuff like that. Not to feed his thing, but just to help him out, pay a bill, rent. It got to the point where I said one day, I said, "Hey man, I can't help you anymore." And as much as it hurt me, it was just like, "This is what you need." I didn't tell him that, but I knew. I said, "This is what you need." And the one thing I did tell him, I said, "Look, man," I said, "if you don't become accountable, you're gonna end up like some of those homeless people you see down the street." And every homeless person has their own story. But I'm telling him, I'm like, if you don't change it, you're going down a dark road, and I'm not going to be there.
Sure.
Because everyone has a limit, and that's the only way that I could love him.
Sure.
It was tough love, where I had to say no. Sounds like it's kind of where your parents got to.
And I couldn't see it at the time because I'm wallowing in self-pity, right? If you had my problems, you drink and drug too. But I brought those problems upon myself because I was unwilling to do the inner work, clean out the wreckage of my past, which were those underlying issues. But I did that, right? I didn't like the leveling of my pride, the confession of my shortcomings in order to attain greater humility, which were the essentials towards my transformation from the scared little boy that went to the bottle for all my solutions to the person that I'm becoming today, where I can have these conversations, right? I didn't know what my purpose was in life, and this is where God came in.
Okay.
Little did I know, that purpose was right in front of me the entire time, and I was living it every single second of every single day. And
What was that? What was that like? That moment that you said you realized you weren't God anymore, and that there was a God, and like, what was that moment for you? What was the catalyst for that switch?
I felt the weight of the world lifted off my shoulders.
Mm.
And the only reason why that weight of the world was on me is because I let it be on me. And once I finally let go and finally made a decision to ask for help, and I started working a recovery program where I'm surrounded by guys that understand what goes on up here. They understand the obsession that we have towards not just drug and alcohol, but just anything. Because I mean, as an addict, I'll obsess over anything, right?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it could be golf, it could be YouTube channels and personal development. It can be over the drugs and the alcohol. It could be over, some girl that I like. Whatever the case may be, it's like my mind's looking for something to latch onto and obsess over, right?
Okay. Yeah. Reminds me of a book called Atomic Habits. Have you read that?
Yes, I have.
And for those that don't know, in the book it says replace your bad habits with a good habit until it becomes second nature to you.
100%.
It's funny because my wife the other day, she's like, she's always trying to research me, I guess, It's always us, they're trying to change. No, I love you, babe. But she, but she said that she read somewhere that the reason that I am the way that I am, OCD-ish or just, very type A-ish, is because it's like an addiction. The way that I dry myself when I get out the shower or vacuum or clean or put my clothes on. That's what she said. She said it's like being an addict. I didn't necessarily agree with it, but I do understand the correlation between the muscle memory of repetition of if I continue down this path. It's also time management, but it helps me get to point A to Z faster, for me at least.
Sure.
Is that addicting? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think when I see the way that the world is now, I mean, specifically with phones,
Cell phones, yeah.
with social media, right? I mean, I remember I would walk into DFW airport, getting ready to board a flight to go visit family up in New York. I look around and I just take it in. Every person in the entire airport that was sitting down waiting for that flight, they were on their phone.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, that's another addiction, right? I mean, because this right here cuts me off from this right here.
100%. Yes.
Being able to connect on that deep emotional level, which is something that I didn't know how to do because I never let anybody in.
And this is like way before social media was what it was.
Sure.
Right? It was probably at the beginning for you.
For sure. I mean, another coping mechanism is those quick dopamine triggers that come as a byproduct of getting those subscribers, getting those likes, and getting those positive comments, right? I was chasing that. And I would put up this facade of somebody that I wanted you to see, to self-serve myself and my pride, my ego, and my addiction versus doing something out of service to somebody else who may need a podcast like this, right? And that's why I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be able to share this experience and the reason why I'm being as honest as I am is because I want to let, the viewers know it's okay to get vulnerable. It's okay to open up.
Talk about that, man. What's your viewpoint on men don't talk enough?
Sure.
And, I've been surrounded by people. I'm only 42, but I've been surrounded by people that are older than me. I don't like using the term boomer. I think it's like just derogatory.
Yeah.
But I've been surrounded by people that are older and they're just kind of like, men don't do that and you shouldn't do this. One time, I told a buddy of mine, I was just like, hey, man, you smell good. What kind of cologne is that? And then this older person was just like, he leaned into me and said, hey, RJ, like, men don't go around telling other men they smell good. And I was just like, my father, who's he'll be 80 this year, told me a man should always smell good and groom himself and be respectful and take care of his body. And
Sure.
I'm like, he's older than you. But I think we get stuck into these worldly norms of this is what a man is, this is what a man should be. I'm comfortable in my skin, so I can tell another person, like, hey, man, you've been working out. I can see the gains where I like that cologne. But I think men have been accustomed to suck it all in. And I tell people all the time, Jesus wept. That's in the Bible. You mean to tell me that you're manlier than Jesus who went to the cross?
Mhm.
But anyway, I'm going on a tangent.
No, you're good. No, this I love this. I love where this conversation's going. And again, me in the past, I actually thought I knew who I was as a person. When the weekend rolled around and I get ready to go out and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, the biggest lie that I told myself is that I loved myself before I picked up the bottle.
Mm,
And I was checking all the boxes. I had the money. I had the car. I was going out. I was dating. I was checking every single box as far as what,
wow.
I see on social media of what
Yes.
a man should be.
Mm,
But today, after having the capacity to get vulnerable, and I don't have any of those things now.
for
I'm
sure.
more of a man today than I was in the past,
Amen.
where I can sit down and have a conversation and look another man or another female in the eyes and know exactly who the hell that I am in that conversation. But also accept the fact that I'm never going to know who I am long term, because in 5 minutes, I'm going to have grown as a byproduct of this conversation. When
Wow.
I walk out of this
I like that.
podcast, I will have changed
Mm,
as a person.
mm,
And I want that to be better, because throughout that change, that's where I grow spiritually. When I grow spiritually and improve that conscious contact, I'm building a relationship with God. As I'm building that relationship with God, my service work and my purpose and reason in life is to be of maximum service to the alcoholic and the addict that still suffers.
mm.
So that guy or that gal that's sticking a needle in their arm, that's on a binge, that's asking for money to get their next hit, God has queued that person up in the pipeline that I haven't even met, so that when they come across me, I can be the best possible version of myself to be of maximum service to that
Amen.
person.
Yes.
But in order to do that, I had to get in touch with these emotions, man. I had to know what made me tick, what was driving those behaviors
Mm,
that led me to do what it was that I was doing. And I'm okay with that person today, but I had to get honest with myself
right.
for that, in order for that to manifest. So that's my personal opinion and experience on it. And that's basically, I'm not sure if any of you that resonates with.
No, it does. I think it resonates with the audience too. We're all in different journeys in our life, whether it's spiritual or not. We're all going to learn. Sounds like you're not just learning from your environment, but you're allowing it to build you up. I tell people all the time, like if you go through the fire and you see God, God's going to create that godly character in you.
Sure.
And it's funny because we had a conversation the other day at a men's group, and we talked about how men can be passive. And one of the things I looked at the cross and I said, if Jesus was a passive man, he wouldn't have went to that cross, because he had to forgive Judas, even though he knew Judas was going to backstab him. And even though he knew that, he didn't tell the rest of the disciples what was going on. He let things happen the way that they needed to happen.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone has free will, but he was responsible for the world. So he said, I have to go through the cross. I'm not going to sit here and put Judas on blast. I got to do what I have to do as a man and take care of a godly man. So I see that as the ultimate example of kind of what you're saying. As humans, we got to go through the fire. And if we go through the fire and we're accountable, that builds our godly character up.
100%.
So,
And that's what it is. I mean, God has been the solution all along.
hmm,
I just wasn't willing to see it because I had my own thing going on. And it brought me through the fire, which is what I needed in order to have that catalyst moment,
yes.
that epiphany that said it's time. So this idea and this ego that was wrapped around me being the party guy and going out had to be gone. I had to be broken down to a point where I was finally willing not to submit, but to surrender on my own free will and make that decision for myself, to seek the spirituality that came as a byproduct of doing the inner work.
Hmm,
It came from within. And
yeah.
after coming through within, now I can turn it over and know that God's got my back. The universe has got my back. All I have to do is just continue to put one foot in front of the other, do the next right thing, and look for opportunities to be of maximum service to anybody who may need my help, and be ready for that time if somebody ever comes to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can just hear in your story. I can see the spiritual transformation based on all the things that you said you went through. Where are you today in your faith, and where are you?
Growing,
You're sober, obviously.
growing.
You're grown.
You know,
That's awesome. I love that.
as
Yeah.
soon as I plateau spiritually, that's where those thoughts start to come back in.
Okay.
Those reoccurring behaviors, right? I like what you said about continuing to do the next right thing, right? Developing those habits. There's a saying in recovery is you have to act your way into right thinking so you can think your way into right acting,
Oh wow, I've never heard
right?
that. That's awesome.
Right? It's
Yeah.
rewiring those neural pathways
Yes.
so that it becomes a working part of the mind. So it's second nature, right? Like getting up and brushing your teeth. I had to fundamentally change the entire way that I went about, my day on a day by day basis. And it wasn't until then where the magic started to happen, where the serenity and the peace started to flow in, where the presence of God, just manifested itself in me physically, emotionally, mentally, and then obviously spiritually, right?
Yes.
And I continue to grow on a day by day basis. I don't want to plateau spiritually.
I love that. So do you practice a serenity prayer? How deep do you use that? And
Absolutely. Any time that I go to a recovery meeting, that's one of the first things that we talk about, right? Is the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Amen.
And that's
I love that.
that's what it is, man. And it's a beautiful thing. And being able to let go and just ride the wave instead of trying to control it, and just accept the ebbs and flows of life, and just respect the fact that, you know what, if an obstacle comes up in my place, it's probably there for a reason, to be able to learn and use it as an opportunity for spiritual growth.
What are steps, or what would you recommend would be the first things to do to someone that's listening to you and saying, man, that's me. How do I go from where I'm at to where he's at? What are the first steps that you would tell them?
I would say you can, if so, they probably reach out to you, right? You have my permission to send out my phone number to anybody who can identify with this.
For sure.
This is my life purpose and this is my reason. It starts with taking action.
That's good.
The worst thing that I could tell myself is that I got this. The best thing that I could tell myself was, I don't know. Can you help me? Because that opens myself up for growth. That's where that surrender comes in. Having a conversation with picking up the phone and not texting, but calling. Building that relationship on a more emotional level was the catalyst, right?
Right.
Because until I was able to build a relationship with another human being,
Yeah.
how am I going to build a relationship with something I can't see, taste, touch, or smell if I can't do that with another human being?
That's true.
That's where it started.
Iron sharpens iron.
That's what it is, man. But we hold each other accountable at the end of the
Yes,
day, right?
yes, yes.
Having that brotherhood,
It's like
guys.
a battle buddy in the military.
That's
right?
what it is,
Yeah.
man. Like, not a guy that's going to co-sign on my BS, but a dude that's going to challenge me in order
Man.
to grow. Find a mentor, right?
Yes,
Find
yes.
find a mentor that, you see something that you want what that person has. There's something about this dude. There's something about this guy that I like. And try to reach out. Ask for help. Try building that relationship. And then just see where that goes, right? Show me who your friends are, and I'll show you your future.
Hey, there you go. How do you get? Obviously, you can't do it for them. They got to do it for themselves, like you did it for yourself.
Sure.
When you see somebody at that point where they're making the changes and they're making the movements, slow improvements, but they keep slipping. For every 10 steps forward, they take 20 steps back.
Yeah.
When they make a mistake, what do you say to them?
That's life, brother.
Yeah.
That's life.
Is that the part where you say, okay, kind of like your parents did you, and be like, nah, you got to kind of,
Sure.
what do you do at that point?
What I've come to understand is, like, those setbacks would really deter me from wanting to continue to push forward. But that's where the spiritual growth comes from. Because when I had those step back, I immediately snapped into fear. Right?
Okay.
And I was afraid to keep going because I didn't know what the outcome was, because the results that I wanted in my head didn't manifest themselves. But they ain't my results. They're God results. So if something's in that way and I have those setbacks, there's probably a reason for it.
For sure.
How can I learn from this? How can I continue to take step forward? How can I reflect? Was I in fear? Was I not in fear? If I am in fear, the best way to break out of it is to transcend it.
That's awesome.
I had to have, again, man, had to have that mentor, had to have a community of guys that I could stay plugged into to have that support system. I had to pray. I had to meditate, or I get to pray.
Yes.
I get to meditate on a day by
I
day
love that.
basis.
Yes.
I get to read spiritual literature to continue to learn. You know, I'm sure with you reading the Bible, I have recovery literature that I work off of. I feel like I'm literally reading a book about myself
Wow.
because I can identify with everything that I'm going through, with the majority of stuff that I can identify, but then apply it to my everyday life.
Right. You got the answers. Like, instead of why do I do this to myself, or I'm in a different situation, like you said, that book you're reading, you're like, wait a minute, this is me. You're looking in a mirror. No, I think that's phenomenal. Can you tell me a little bit more about, you said you got plugged into like a men's group, and you talk a lot about accountability partners, and you showed them a lot of gratitude.
Sure.
Those men or women who helped you in that scenario with that group,
Sure.
talk a little bit about that and how they assisted you and helped you and pushed you closer to where you are today.
Sure. Um, I mean, it just started with me continuing to show up to meetings, right? Recovery meetings on a day by day basis, making phone calls. And then what I came to understand was, because again, with recovery meetings, the disease of addiction is like a revolving door. You know, you're going to see somebody one time, and then you're never going to see them again because
Right.
they go back out, they get caught in that cycle. But the more effort that I decided to put into something, and one thing that I realized was I don't have any control over the results, but I do have control over how much effort I put into whatever it
I
is that
like
I'm
that.
doing.
Okay.
And what I realized is the more effort I put into something, the people within the fellowship start to recognize that, because my effort is giving them value, it's giving them hope, because they see the transformation within me, and it reminds them
Yes.
I used to be there.
Mm.
I want to help this dude. I don't want to give him a handout. I want to give him a hand up to try to help him continue to enhance his spiritual growth. But I had to make that decision to ask for help and take that next right step and that next right action in order to do it.
I love that. And there's a lot of spiritual growth that I hear coming from you, and I can see God using you as a vessel to speak to others, whoever watches this video. And
Sure.
so keep going, keep doing that, man. I'm very proud of you. I know it's been a tough road, but like you said, you're here. I love the fact that you show gratitude, because obviously we live in the United States of America. It's a great country. But sometimes when we live in a certain environment, like our kids, right? Like, my kids didn't grow up the way that I grew up.
Yeah.
So their life is a different bubble.
Sure.
So it's hard to appreciate something when you didn't lack it, or you came into something else. But you show a lot of gratitude, and I love that, because we wake up every day, and I tell my kids, like, every day you get up, it's an opportunity to do better. It's an opportunity to forgive. It's an opportunity to forgive ourselves. And we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to stumble in this life, but you found a purpose, and it's like in serving and helping others. And that's ultimately what God wants us to do as disciples. So I'm going to continue to pray for your group and everything you do, man. I think you're doing phenomenal things, and God has you where He wants you, because now you're finally listening.
Finally. Hey, it takes, at the end of the day, it takes what it takes. And again, man, living in gratitude has been the solution to enhance that emotional sobriety, and having opportunities to come on here. And I can't express enough gratitude. I truly believe that me meeting Victor, and like me being here right now, that there's some divine intervention going on to have an opportunity to do this.
Amen. Praise
I
God.
am growing spiritually by being on this podcast, and you're helping me help the alcoholic and addict that I haven't even met yet.
Yes.
That's how this whole thing comes full circle, I truly believe. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. You're welcome on this podcast
Yeah.
whenever you want to, dude.
Yeah.
Any episode you want to talk about life, or just your journey and helping others, like, you're more than welcome to. This is your house. Thank you, and it's definitely been ordained by God, because He keeps sending me people like you, which tells me that I'm supposed to do this. And hearing your story actually helps me too,
Cool.
because kind of like you said about the group and the men, and they see someone growing.
That's what it is.
When I see it, it helps me and say, you know what, keep going, keep pushing. Thank you so much, man. We're going to leave some links in the description here so you guys can reach out to Bryan. And for those who would like to talk to Bryan directly, I'll get you in contact with them. But we'll do more episodes together.
Yeah,
And
let's do
thank
it,
you so
man.
much for being on the podcast, man.
All
You're
right,
doing
brother.
phenomenal things.
Thank you, my friend.
Well, if you like that, make sure you like and subscribe to Montoya Power Podcast. We're going to probably do a Patreon page. And if you guys want to do donations, make sure you set that up, because we plan to do some traveling and to talk to other speakers internationally and in the United States. So I'll see you guys later. Enjoy your life. Stay focused. Like and subscribe. And as always, follow the discernment of Jesus Christ. Now get out of here.